So accountability is about honesty. So it's never about yelling or attacking, but if that person actually doesn't know that they're not contributing the same as someone else in the team, if they don't know that they're not meeting the standards of care that we would expect, if they don't know that even their appearance and their dress standard isn't up to, because we're not pointing that out, we certainly can't sit behind the scenes and critique this person unfairly. So I think the biggest thing is honesty, timely honesty too. You know, if I put my bank hat back on, saying no to anyone is hard. Decline, the word declined is hard, but a fast no is far better than a slow no. And I think that's the same with any feedback.
Hey, welcome back to the Scale My Clinic podcast. Today I'm joined by Karlea Wootton, who is business manager at Townsville and Suburban Medical Practice. You'll notice I'm standing up because when I talk to people who mean business, I need to be standing. And so, hey, Karlea, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So we might just jump straight into it. Tell us about you, how long you've been in your role managing a general practice, and maybe anything relevant that came before that. Just set the scene for us.
Sure. I joined the team at Townsville and Suburban going on 18 months ago now. I had challenged myself before a milestone birthday last year to see if my skills I had acquired after 20 years in banking were transferable into an unrelated industry. This role just happened to pop up, so timing was right, place was right, and it turns out business skills are transferable regardless of industry.
Excellent. Who'd have thunk it? Something you're good at in one place, you could be good at somewhere else. Awesome. And so there you go. You've been 20 years in another industry. You've come into this role. And so if we go back to that time, when you first stepped into the role, what did you notice maybe was missing or different, or what were your first impressions when you came in?
It was very obvious to me that this was a non-performance based industry. So I've come from a heavy sales or performance based industry that was really heavily regulated, very heavily monitored, and each role within the banking industry or within a bank has a target, a structured KPI, a really detailed position description or outcome requirement. And it was obvious coming into general practice, we were in a much grayer field. So it's not that some of those items didn't exist or weren't being implemented, but certainly not to the level of structure and execution I was used to.
Right. And so here you come. You've been used to a particular thing for a long time. You've come into this new setting, and then suddenly it's quite different in terms of the accountability structures and those sorts of things. So how do you go about addressing that? Like, what were your, was it a problem from your perspective, or was it okay?
Yeah.
What did
Early,
you do?
I don't think it was a problem. I definitely spent what I would consider a considerable amount of time at the start seeking to understand that structure. So we're in an environment in general practice where we have contractors and employees. That shifts the dynamic to how we would lead those two different types of individuals within our business. So understanding that really early in any workplace environment, things can instantly be improved if people felt heard, and then what they want to be heard with, something happens with or action is taken. So the earliest piece wasn't to put in place some of the things we've now implemented after 18 months. It was getting to know the people, why some roles existed, what was the purpose or function for those roles, and ultimately where were we hoping to be. So the directors have a really clear vision with their vision in place on what they would like to have executed by 2026. They had done a lot of the groundwork or the hard work in mapping that out. but it was obvious what was missing was actually taking the steps to start executing and chipping away on that goal, that we were moving forward towards that December 2026 platform. But the first part is there's got to be a step back. I struggle to move slowly, but yeah, who are these people? What are their drivers? What motivates them? Why are they here? So it's really easy to understand most people come to work because they have to. Everyone's got bills to pay. But there's always more behind that. What is that why? What is that person's driver? You know, what's even triggering some of the behaviour that I'm observing? So, you know, I've got contractors that seem to be very vocal, but what's making them vocal? What is it that is getting in their way every day that's grating them so much that they're getting vocal? So exploring that really quickly, knowing who my squeaky wheels would be, and they're the people I lent into very, very quickly to oil them and remove that. And then from there, it was probably to step back and get to the bigger picture stuff. So I can't do everything at once. So picking a starting point once I understood probably the lay of the business, the current employment structure and the current contractor team, and then going from there.
Right. And so it's a change management situation. And so the first step was like essentially becoming a practical psychologist, like understanding, getting to know, building a relationship, and then understanding, you know, what makes each person tick. And then it came to, there's so many things we could do. We have to sort of start prioritizing. Yeah. And so why was prioritization so important from your perspective?
This is sometimes a challenge for me because I like to do everything yesterday. But at the end of the day, we're better off doing 3 to 5 things amazingly than 10 things really average. In my mind, there's no point in adding something that would be a quick task that would be a tick box, adding it to a list. So in my mind, anything that was quick and easy that had been lagging because my chair had been vacant, I just wanted to cross those things off so we could get past little things into big things. So some of that was just about clearing the way. And then understanding what were the things that were actually going to make bigger impact sooner rather than later probably became a bit of our reasoning to what we've picked why. And I think we do that quite well now as a leadership team. You know, the directors will say, oh, and this. And I say, great. So we have these 2 things. I'm going to ask you to pick between them because I can't do both of those things right now. They're both on the table, but I'll let you choose which thing I'm going to do this week.
Right. Nice. And so you give a filter in terms of prioritizing and capacity. Just before that, you talked about deciding on impact and when it was about choosing, you know, what you work on. Like, have you got a process that you follow for that? Like that you like to use?
I suppose putting on a couple of different hats. So no different than coming from banking, there's multiple stakeholders which I'm considering where that impact would lie. So right now in general practice, the practice is a business. So what is the business impact of the decision we're making, and will that be positive for the long term, not just a short term win? What's the impact to the contractors? So those doctors, they're my customers. You know, my role is to ensure that those contracting doctors are happy, that they want to practice here, that they're actually happy practicing here and they do well while they're here. The staff, it's all well and good to just task them with stuff, but if they're not engaged in what I'm tasking them with, which is going to drive that productivity, which aids our doctors and the patient experience, then we're going to lose. Without the patients, there's no point in opening the doors. So I think in those, what pillars are ticked off. So if we think of the practice as a business, the staff, the patients, and the doctors, how many of those, you know, is this just, you know, the staff would love nice biscuits in the tea room, that's boosting morale, great. Is that actually going to make them more productive, more engaged, more patient focused? What do the patients get out of that? What do the doctors get out of that? So really thinking out of those 4 key pillars, how are we going to get maximum impact across all 4?
Got it. And so here you are, you've come in, You've got to know everyone. You've understood what makes people tick. You've picked your priorities, and you've started to go about implementation to move towards that vivid vision that was set for December 2026. And so, was there a turning point, or was there a place where some sort of shift happened, or was it a gradual thing?
No, I think it has still been gradual. My strength, which doesn't always sound nice spoken out loud, is releasing talent to the universe that doesn't belong in a spot it may be. So very quickly I did turn over the admin and reception team. So there was some really negative limiting beliefs that, you know, I'm not here to serve a doctor, or I'm not doing that. And that just showed that they weren't really aligned to, at the end of the day, without the patients, we don't need the doctors, and without the doctors, we don't need the support staff. So our role, everyone's got a key role to play. So, you know, that slow burn, and then you recruit, and recruitment's not always a smooth process, and we don't always get the best people first go. So some of that is slow moving around right people. The practice had some key leadership roles, some team leaders that were appointed prior to me coming. And I've always been a big believer that if we're going to ask a lot of people in any role, are they clear on that? So did they opt in for these roles? Do they know what we expect and what we're driving? And then are they being rewarded appropriately for the standard I'm asking them for? So some stuff like that I implemented really quickly. So the team leaders were put on a salary, they were paid more, but what I was asking for them also stepped up, and I was happy to drive the accountability based on the package that we had offered. So I think it's variable. The things that can be quickly implemented, executed well, and then managed, there's no need to slow it down. Where there's some longer term, some of that came with relationship building. Like I've had some of the contractors increase hours or increase days, and contract GPs, you don't really just ask them to do that. That's built up over time, and some mutual respect where we as a practice have aimed to give them the best possible practicing experience by alleviating non-patient admin and noise, so they can actually spend their time here clinically practicing and focused on the patients doing the stuff they enjoy, not the stuff that brings them down.
Nice. And so you're known, and the practice is known for strong follow through and high standards. And you've talked about accountability. What does it mean to you, accountability? Like what does it mean for you from your perspective?
For me, it's always, if I say I'm going to do it, then it's happening. One way or another, it will happen. I think the biggest thing, and, you know, to quote Brené Brown, clear is kind, and that is so often lost in translation, that we as humans spend so much time trying not to hurt someone's feelings. If we reflect on that, some of the situations we put ourselves in by doing that, we're actually being really disrespectful to that human and possibly hurting them anyway. So accountability is about honesty. So it's never about yelling or attacking, but if that person actually doesn't know that they're not contributing the same as someone else in the team, if they don't know that they're not meeting the standards of care that we would expect, if they don't know that even their appearance and their dress standard isn't up to, because we're not pointing that out, we certainly can't sit behind the scenes and critique this person unfairly. So I think the biggest thing is honesty, timely honesty too. You know, if I put my banker hat back on, saying no to anyone is hard. The word declined is hard, but a fast no is far better than a slow no. And I think that's the same with any feedback. You know, we've noticed for the last 3 months you've really been dropping the ball here. That feels really awful to someone to hear, that you've had that opinion for 3 months and you've not appropriately shared that, to give them the opportunity to change a behaviour or change a process or lift to the standard to be at the level that we're expecting. So right back at the start, honesty, clarity, sooner rather than later.
Right. And does that mean, in practical terms, not walking past stuff when you see, like, is it like literally every time you walk past something? Is that,
yep.
Is that your...
And from the smallest things, gripes mine, mobile phones on people on the floor, see a nurse with it hanging out their back pocket, you know, you're not a tradie, get that out of there. I don't want to see it again. As opposed to, oh, I mentioned that before and I've just walked past it again. The smallest details, the lead by example in the small details too. I walk through the clinical space and someone's dropped a cotton ball or something hasn't quite missed the bin, you know, leading by example in the pride of what we would expect the appearance and their level of work ethic to be at. But if I'm picking that stuff up or I'm doing something, I'm making sure that I'm pointing it out and not as in, oh, look what I'm doing for you. Hey, we've spoken about this. I've done it this time. I expect to see this from you every time.
Right. And so that was going to be my question. Like, how do you hold people to it without sort of drama or resistance? Have you found any particular things that work really well?
I think the biggest challenge, and I've seen this over my career and with different leaders in different industries, the challenge or some of the pushback comes from inconsistency. So very rarely am I having a staff member argue with me or trying to push back on that feedback because, one, I was really, really clear up front. Two, I didn't say it once and then forget about it. And three, anything I'm asking for, I'm non-clinical, so I'm not displaying clinical skills in the clinical space, but anything else that I'm asking for from a behavioural point of view or a practice standard point of view, I'm delivering that all the time. So, you know, if I say to reception, this is how I want a patient to be greeted. If I'm on the counter, that's how I'm greeting them. If I'm saying answer the phone's ringing and I walk past it, I'll stop, I'll answer it. I'm not participating in what I'm asking for. And I think some of that, you know, it's not, I'm not telling them one thing and doing another. I'm living that piece, but they're never saying, oh, you didn't tell me, or I didn't know, or you weren't clear. So I believe I eliminate the argument by being clear and upfront in the first place.
Got it. And so it's really, what I'm hearing is about being what you're asking them to be, so that you're literally a walking example of that. And so having high personal standards and then holding others to the same expectations, but also articulating them very clearly with repetition.
Oh, always. Humans don't adapt well to change. Repetition is the only way for us to embed anything, particularly if it has needed to be a significant shift from where we were in the past and where we want to be. It has to be. That's how habit is built.
Yeah. And so, you know, there might be a fellow managerial or other leader role person watching this or listening to it who might be thinking, oh, I've told them once or twice, that's enough. What, in your experience, is the right number of times?
If we're truly committed to whatever it is that's being messaged, the message should never stop. The message would never end, because if that is the end goal or that is the utopia of what we're trying to achieve, what gets talked about gets done. The minute we stop talking about it, and we've seen this just in practice recently, we were working towards the CCM changes for November last year. We had this focus around My Medicare. They changed the goalposts. We stopped talking about it, stopped getting done. What gets talked about gets done every time.
Yeah. Yeah. What you focus on is where energy flows. And so maybe there's an owner or a manager watching this who might be frustrated that things keep falling through the cracks. What would be your advice to them? Like, you know, oh, I want this thing done, or it was being done and now it's fallen through the cracks. What would you say to them?
Yeah, a couple of things, and that could be variable depending on what the task is. But ultimately, when any process or task is designed or implemented, we've really got to decide who will ultimately be responsible. And that doesn't necessarily need to be the person doing it, but who is going to take the ultimate responsibility for the continuation of the task and the final outcome? Who's going to do the work or the task or the ongoing steps, and what are the steps? So we've also invested that the practice was in a really good position where quite a number of the internal policies and processes were published, but possibly not updated to the level of detail we were now asking for. So really fleshing that out. So here's what we're going to do. this is why we're doing it. The storytelling behind it is so important for the buy-in. These are the steps that need to happen for it to be executed, and this is who's responsible. I think if it's not an ongoing process, it also has to be a date. When are we going to achieve this? That we're holding ourselves and the whole team accountable to actually getting to an end point, because it's really great to do the planning and write the process and assign tasks. But if that's where we leave it, what was the point? Like, it was just wasted resource, wasted energy.
Nice. So what you want to achieve, who both is going to take ultimate accountability, and
they could be the same person, but not always. The person that's possibly taking the oversight or responsibility may not be the doer, and that's okay, or they could be one and the same.
Absolutely. And so we've got the who's, the when, and the how, and the why. Cool. So we went back, you'd come in from banking, you'd settled in, you'd got to know the people around you, you've turned over, you said, a fair amount of the team. So that's all happened. And then now we're 18 months on from when you started. I would love to know, I know you've done a lot in that time. What are your top 2 or 3 things that you're really proud of, you or the team or TSMP has done in that time?
Well, that's tough.
And it can be more if it wants to be. It's okay.
I think where we are at with our team of GP contractors, there's a really great team here of long-standing GP contractors that are all playing a really active role in what is being delivered from a clinical standpoint, but also a team standpoint, considering we've got independent contractors that work all different days and times throughout the week that have really come together. And I do believe that a good contributing factor of that is the environment we've taken to think outside of what a medical receptionist does and what we've designed for our medical receptionists to do to remove the noise from our GPs, to give them the opportunity to be GPs. So they're never getting on the phone to chase things unnecessarily. Like, anything that doesn't need the doctor is passed back to reception to own, follow through, do. And I think that has given them the ability for them to be happier, to work, to open up extra sessions, to stay a little bit longer, because they're actually getting to spend time in the space they enjoy.
Right. And so that's an example where you've mapped out a GP or the set of GP's days, or you've gone through a process to identify all the friction points. You've removed them, so you've probably made them more productive in the time they're there. But because it feels a bit lighter, you've had them then come back to you and potentially increase the times that they're available to see patients. Wow, that's a double win. Keep going. Sorry, I interrupted you.
The other win I actually think belongs to the directors, not to me. And I think they have just showed such huge courage and humility to take a risk on someone who's not from the industry, given they had this really clear vision of what they wanted for their business. And they allow me to hold them accountable too, as I do with the rest of the team. And that allows me to win in executing what they want me to do. So early piece, I was struggling because I'm used to working at a very high pace, at a really high level. In general practice, maybe don't move at the same pace as I was used to. But I think as a whole, their bravery to step aside and know that the skills that I was bringing and the execution that I was bringing is actually what they wanted, but be brave enough to change and step out of the way to allow some of that to happen, is actually a really big win for them and for me, because without that, obviously that was friction point, because what was the point of me being here if I couldn't do what they were asking me to do? And so I think their bravery and humility to be held to the same standards and account and lift to achieve their goal has been a really big win.
Wow. And so that there'd been friction at the beginning when it was, like, this is new, this is a bit, if I'm there, I'm the incumbent, sort of owners in the practice, and then now you've got someone.
Look, I think there's some insight, and this is probably going a little bit off track, that it's really clear that doctors in any specialty are not taught business skills as part of their medical degree. And there's some that have chosen to educate themselves and have built amazing businesses. This business has been here for more than 50 years. But there is a difference between a strong business of the future and a long-standing business of the past. It's 2025, the world is changing, GP is forever changing, the government pop in, change stuff. We heard just recently in Melbourne, it will be ever evolving. And being brave enough to take a step forward on what is coming instead of waiting for it to come is the opportunity in any industry to do well. You know, step forward when it's a choice as opposed to be dragged along once the decision's made. That has been a huge win, and I think will continue to be into the future with the directors truly focused on that future vision they have for their business and being brave enough to sometimes probably what they consider leap instead of step forward.
I like it. And so that probably brings us, just before we started recording today, you talked to me about one of the stark insights, and you mentioned at the beginning today, was about coming into a non-performance industry from a performance industry. And then you described some of the wins or changes or benefits of bringing that mindset from another industry into this one. This might be a good time just to share a bit more about that and your experience of that.
Yeah, look, I think coming in, this practice is GP owned. You hear a little bit of talk about a corporate and what that might look and feel like. Apparently GPs billing well is like a dirty word, which fascinates me, because have you ever heard a surgeon utter the words bulk billed? No. I suppose I've come from an industry where I dealt with other professionals such as solicitors, accountants, and never would they get to the end of their training and look for a way to discount their skill or say I'm only new here. So I think the opportunity to be successful in general practice as an owner, or even as the individual contractors, they're small businesses in their own right, is being able to put on that business hat without guilt if it's being balanced with excellent patient care and service being delivered. So the other gap that I really noticed is we don't talk around the word service. So we're often talking about quality of care or patient outcomes, but I don't feel like I heard a lot of talk about service. And in my mind, as a private billing or a mixed billing practice, we're asking someone to pay to come here, and that needs to be about more than the time in the consult room. The booking experience needs to be good. The receptionists need to be delightful. Eyes up the second that door opens. The phone needs to be answered as priority. We need to be warm but professional. The nurses need to run to schedule. They need to be well presented and well trained in their clinical skill. The doctor needs to do a good job. And then on checkout, the billing's got to be good, the future booking's got to be good, the whole piece needs to be good. And I think getting everyone to value themselves, so in particular the GPs, so I've got some GPs that are well and truly fellowed, done their masters and still saying, oh, I haven't been here for 30 years, so I'm down, the bottom end. We've got 16 contracting GPs. We are fully booked. We are currently closed to new patients. And that's because our patients value those doctors. They value the care they get from them. They value their experience. They value their skills. So if I even want to take the business terminology out of it, we call it a Karlea pep talk. We've got to value the skills we're bringing to the table and not be worrying about billing or discounting off the back of that. If you did some tick and flick medicine and you were absolutely, excuse my French, taking the piss, and you spent 6 minutes and you want to bill a 23, well, I'm actually going to stand in front of you and say you probably shouldn't have billed that. But if we have spent the time with the patient, we have delivered excellent patient care and an experience, then we need to be appropriately billing for the time and the skills and the experience we are offering to our patients. So I think getting everyone to remember that business, billing, making money isn't actually a dirty word if we are doing with intent to deliver for the patients. And just some of these talks with the doctors, I didn't troll through reports. I used a bit of Cubico, but I wasn't trolling through to talk to them about individual line items or their billing as a whole. It was around remembering, why did you do medicine in the first place? I love to ask that question. Why? Why are you here? Why did you choose GP? At the end of the day, your time is valuable and the patient comes here because they want to see you. And we've got to remember what that looks like. As a business as a whole, the nurses understanding that the doctors pay a service fee for the delivery of their function. Reception, those doctors pay us a service fee for the delivery of your function. And we offer a high level of service that aligns with our service fee, but it is all a business transaction. And we can take all of that out of it. And we know that we put humans back into that space and what those functions are and what those relationships are. But at the end of the day, we seem to dance around the fact that a successful general practice actually needs to be a good business. And business decisions, good ones, aren't always nice ones. And that would be no different to a GP consult. A nice GP consult might be very different to a good GP consult.
Absolutely. Preach. Really powerful words. And so you've obviously been working, quite a lot on that conversation or multiple versions of that conversation across the practice. How has it landed? Like, what's been the impact? Like, what have you seen in terms of results wise?
Yeah, so what we've actually seen is a lift in our hourly billing across the practice. Each doctor has had a lift in that space. The biggest impact is probably on those that were lacking a bit of confidence. So they were registrars here, they're now fellowed, and they maybe haven't transitioned their own mindset into that space of being a fellow GP. So for some of them, we call that a Karlea pep talk, and that's about boosting self-confidence in their value, their skills and their education. The other big part of this has been our nurses understanding their role in the role they play and what's appropriately billed through the MBS and what is eligible based on the services we're provided. And the third thing would be with our registrars. So the front end of this registrar intake this semester, they're a registrar, but they've already got a medical degree. They are qualified doctors and they might not yet be fellow GPs, but again, you can bill for the investment you give to the patient. It's a value proposition. So if you spend the 30 minutes and you've done the mental health care plan and unrelated over here, you've offered another service and you've done it, you can bill for what you provided without guilt. And I think slate clean, particularly when we've got new doctors like a registrar that's come in and we've set that tone for the practice and the patients know that they're coming here. It's very upfront. Before we close to new patients, we send a new patient email, we disclose that upfront. So in terms of that financial consent, they're really clear. We are not a bulk billing practice. And that's not to say that we don't have functions that we bulk bill consistently that play part of the business model and the role we play in the community, but billing is not a dirty word. For us to be sustainable and be here for the long term offering high quality care, billing needs to be built into our DNA and our mindset. As long as it offsets with the value and the experience we're providing to patients, we're fine.
Nice. And then you talked about bravery when we were sort of just warming up for today. Can you talk a bit about that? Because it probably links in nicely to what you just spoke about.
Yeah, look, I said that I had to be brave and check that I could see if my skills translated outside of banking, which had been my whole adult working life. And I think, the opposite of that, the fear of what if, we don't know what if we don't just try. So I think if I've said go down this path and it doesn't work, then we'll try a different path. But I think each time we've stepped forward and made a change that really aligns with that vivid vision and the future state of the business that the directors wanted, you've got to start somewhere. And there might be some fear there, but doing nothing is far worse than even doing the wrong thing, because there's always time to redirect or try another option or try another approach. But doing nothing, it seems ridiculous to me to sit here and talk about all these great things that we want but not execute.
Yeah. And so when you've got a new project or a new initiative, what's the mindset you approach it with? Like, is it, because for some people it might be, I'm so busy, I just can't handle another thing. Or for others, it might just be, I don't want change. I just want to keep it the same. What's your mindset around new projects, new initiatives?
Most of the time I can appreciate, as we know, humans aren't well adapted to change as a whole. So I've probably always got that there. But again, I believe the storytelling and the why. And I think if we're going to do something as a leadership team, have we thought about this to deliver the message well? The background info is usually what helps the team come along. So I've always believed that transparency in leadership is so vital, because there shouldn't feel like there's a secret. And we are really open, like we'll be like, we're thinking about this, and we'll tell them about the thought process, because it's the first step to change, because they've already started to get some comfort around the concept. So I think the honesty up front helps that step forward. I can appreciate at times, sometimes I think we talk about the next thing that we need to do, and I think, but I've still got 25 things on my list that isn't completed. Sometimes for me, it's a refocus, and almost, are there some things on those lists that aren't big things that I could actually just spend half a day and be done with, to give me the energy and the focus to move to the next big thing. The other biggest thing I think for this role, and my role particularly at the practice, is pulling myself away from the stuff that there's value for me to be involved, but I actually don't need to be involved. And being comfortable to let that go, which I don't do well either, but let it go, because there's times when it's the right thing where I do shut my door, which I also hate to do, but shut my door and head down. And how I walk away feeling at the end of that day, or at the end of the week, or when I meet with the directors and I say this, and this is done, we've stepped forward here. That's a reminder that that offset of putting down something else or leaving something with someone else was the right thing to do.
Right. So you'll delegate the outcome, focus on, make yourself less accessible for a period of time, so you can focus on the thing that your priority is.
Probably need to do more of that, but it works when I do it.
Right. And so there's times, especially when there's change and external force change, we can sometimes lose a bit of energy or inspiration. How do you stay energized, motivated, focused? What are particular things or places you go or whatever to stay motivated and inspired?
I think that's really relevant. It's easy for things to pile up, particularly if you don't feel like you're getting some wins on some projects or with the team or with staff. Yeah, I get that. For me personally, I do pretty long hours, but outside of work is outside of work. So I don't make it a habit of taking a laptop home. I've got Outlook and Teams on my phone, so that's kind of always with me, but I'm not getting into anything big at the dinner table at home. I'm really leaving that here. So I give my effort when I'm here and be comfortable to put it down when I'm not. The other thing is a plan. I suppose that natural drive to have something ticked off the list, big or small, is a driver. I'm probably one of those people that add something to the list so I can tick it off because it feels good to tick off the list. But I think having a plan and seeing a way forward, and right now for me it would also be acknowledging the small wins as opposed to waiting for that really big end of the tunnel goal, acknowledging the small wins along the way to remind me that we are progressing, maybe not at the pace or standard that I was used to, but for the industry, for the practice, for our patients, for the team, we are in a really good place.
Nice. And so there'll be other people in managerial positions in practices across the country. If you could share one message or one challenge that you would give to them, that if they rise to that challenge, you reckon that would help? Because you spend a fair amount of time around other people in managerial positions and you've seen quite a lot of high performers. Yeah, what would that challenge or message be?
I think if it is genuinely to a leader who wants to be a true people leader, the ability, if you're not doing it now, for the clear is kind message. If there are some people or some situations where you feel like you've circled back around or you're not getting there, are you prepared to truly reflect on whether you have been upfront, clear, and set the clarity, continued to consistently message those expectations and delivered your part in it? It's the first step forward to starting to build that type of team and type of momentum that gets the outcomes, that gets the step forward. But it doesn't always feel comfortable and you've got to do it anyway.
Nice. So that's for the managers. And then if there are owners here who want to work better in team and collaboration with the manager or managers in their business, what advice would you give them to help them get the best out of their manager or managers and team?
I think the first question would be for them to ask themselves, so the concept of what you would like, are you actually prepared to allow that? So in theory it feels good, but are you prepared to change what you need to change? And that might just be a mindset piece, that might be a behavioural piece. And then if you're going to really want your leader, practice manager, business manager, whatever you're calling them, to be empowered, are you prepared to get out of the way and let them utilise their skills to do what you're asking them to do?
Nice. So if you want something, are you willing to give permission to the person you've entrusted to help you build it to actually create it?
And then in fairness to that person, do they have the skills to execute on what you're asking? And if they're still your right person without the skills, who do you engage to invest in them to grow that skill so they can be that person? And then again, not in an overly negative way, but it's possibility your business has built past where that person's skill or even drive sits for themselves. So have you got the right people in the right chair to get you to the next level or the next stage of where you envisage your business to be?
Nice. A great question to finish on. If you are watching this and struggling with achieving something, are the people or persons or single person in the seat the right person for the next stage of your journey? Karlea Wootton, business manager at Townsville Suburban, you have been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you.
An absolute pleasure.
Lovely. Thank you.